Greetings to all my friends at Soon Chun Hyang University. I'm Mark Prensky. I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm going to talk to you about our changing society and future, specifically about the coming age of empowerment for young people. Now, if we are going to empower young people, we'd better ask why. We'd better ask to what end and what are our goals. My goal is a better world, and I hope that's your goal too. And specifically, I'm looking for good, powerful, world-improving people. That's what I want to create. Good, powerful, world-improving people. And to get there, I try to imagine a 21st century approach and path to our goal if we started from scratch. If we started with the kids of today and the future world they'll live in mind. And I think that will be a very different path. I like to use metaphors, and one of my favorite metaphors for education is the cake and icing metaphor. What I mean by that is that you can think of education as a cake, and it was a very good cake for a while. But gradually, over time, much of it has gone stale. Much of it has gotten old and become not as effective as we'd like it to be. If we were smart, we would just bake a new cake. That's what we do when a cake goes stale. But that's not what happens. We're not baking a new education cake. Instead, we put lots of icing on top of the old cake, leaving the stale cake underneath. Icing, in our metaphor, stands for incremental changes. That's what we do. We keep most of what we have, and we put incremental changes on top. And that's because it's very hard to change the cake that is 20th century education. Adults still want it for their kids. Adults still believe in the power to help kids. We all went through education. We know what it is. The old education doesn't care about the new things kids need, like empowerment or accomplishment or impact. And very few parents want the world to experiment with their kids. In fact, it's the opposite. Plus, 20th century education has a huge infrastructure. It supports many, many people at institutions all over the world. We rank schools, so that kind of legitimizes it. There's really little consensus about where to go if we were to bake a new cake and what the alternatives would be. Our current education is very self-protective, with huge antibodies to change, and whatever pressure there is for change, and certainly there is some, is almost entirely for incremental changes. So my advice to you is don't make icing. Reject incrementalism. Think different, because our kids will live in new times and they can do many more things than they could in the past. It's our job to help them. Now, let me talk about the 21st century. First of all, it's a new context. The world is very different. The world that our kids will live in, the world that in some places the kids already live in, is very different from the world that those of us who were born in the 20th century know about and understand. Even when that world looks almost the same on the surface, same buildings, same people if you look at them, it's very, very different underneath. And it's becoming even more different. And what's becoming different, in addition to the world, are the people in the world. We don't yet know all the implications for neuroscience and brains. There will certainly be some. But we can say that humans are different in at least three important ways. The first is that they are becoming, and we as humans are becoming, symbiotic hybrids with our new technologies. We are all becoming symbiotic human hybrids. The technologies are becoming part of it. Not just tools, but parts of our body. I think that's why it's so hard to take mobile phones away from kids, because we're actually cutting off a body part. Not that they necessarily know how to use that body part well yet, but it is a new body part. The second way humans are different is by having new beliefs and attitudes. I'll talk more about this in a minute, but what is key is that the beliefs and attitudes of people in the 20th century are very different than the beliefs and attitudes of people in the 21st century. I see beliefs in an overall way as changing generationally. And the third way humans are different is where they live, because now we're starting to live more and more of our lives in the cloud. We live both on Earth and in the cloud. And the proportions, whether it's half and half or whatever, is what we're all working out. But there's a new kind of hybrid world that exists, and we've got to figure out what's better in each part. Clearly, hugs are better in the Earth world, but many things, maybe this talk, are more easily done in the cloud world. So if you put together a new context and new humans, we have a new age. And I call that age the new age of empowerment for young people. Some people call it other things like the Anthropocene or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. But I see it as a new age of empowerment for our young people. And what about the COVID pandemic that we're all currently going through? To me, that is, like the new millennium, a marker of this new age between the old and the new. Hopefully, the disease will go away soon, but it has accelerated some things, such as the move to the cloud, and it's also been a barrier to some things, such as physical contact and travel. So while the 20th century was something we could characterize as the education century, it was the time when this wonderful thing called education moved all around the world and became more or less the same all around the world. I think the 21st century is going to be the empowerment century. In that century, our 21st century task is no longer to educate our kids, it's to empower them. Yet when I say this, a lot of people push back because they have a personal idea, and you may, of what education should be, how uplifting, how ennobling, how wonderful it is. Sadly, that's not what the world produced. The education that we made in the 20th century, which was very good for the 20th century, is disempowering for the 21st century. It's time we moved past it. Lots of people see this. Lots of people want to change. So we need to think about how we can go past incremental changes and see the young people as having a huge role in this. I don't think today is going to be changed by old people like me. I think today is going to be changed by young people who are empowered. They will make tomorrow different. We can certainly have some ideas, and we can certainly try to guide them, but we all have a real crucial choice to make for our children. We can either pull them backwards into our past that we know and are comfortable with, and that we think has been very good in many ways, or we can guide them towards this new frontier opening up, which is their future. And of course, it's hard to lead them when we don't know exactly what that place is, so really our role is enablers. We can try to keep them from making big mistakes that we can foresee, but our task is really to help them get deep into that frontier and to empower the kids of the 21st century. Now, I'm in the process of writing my next two books. One is going to be called Empower Them Now, and that's for adults on how to do it. And the other one is going to be called Empower Yourself Now, and that's for kids, and how to empower yourself and get guidance in the process. The challenge that we face is that we still have a lot of 20th century people who are now living in the 21st century. We've got people from another time living in these times where we're moving so quickly to the future. And that's a big issue we need to address. So what is empowerment? How can we tell an empowered person from an unempowered person? That's what we really want to be able to determine if we're going to make empowered people. My answer is very simple. Empowered people get things done in the real world. If you are empowered, you can get things done. And that's what Google once posted on their website. We need people who can get things done. And people get things done in the 21st century, not because they've learned stuff or know stuff, but because they understand how to accomplish stuff. They know how to get things done. Accomplishment is really another word for getting useful things done. Learning, which so much of academia has been about for so long, is not an end, it's a means. We learn in order to accomplish. We learn in order to accomplish. And we have a new metric. We used to measure grades, degrees, credentials. Now we can measure positive impact. Measurable positive impact is the new metric for empowerment. And it's easy to tell. You can't see this necessarily quantitatively, but certainly qualitatively, you can see that something was not good or didn't exist before, and that it's much better or exists after. And that's an accomplishment. And that's what we want to bring out in our young people, and that's what we need to count as success. So let me talk about why the 21st century is different. There are a number of ways that I want to share with you about what's new in the 21st century that didn't exist for kids in previous centuries. The first one we all know about, new technology. It's growing exponentially, it's converging, we all see it, we all live it, it's part of our society, especially here in Korea. What's especially new about this, as I just said, is that half of life is now in the cloud, or is on its way to being in the cloud, and we can act with people and connect with people all over the globe in ways that we haven't before. What's happening as a result of this, and what else is new, is that we are redefining community in the 21st century. For all of human history, community meant mostly the people who lived nearby, or who worked nearby, or who you wrote letters to, or who were physically brought in by an organization. Now, we're moving from this idea of co-location, of being in the same place physically in order to accomplish something, to affinity. Because if we have the same affinity, if we have similar purpose, if we have similar interests, we can be anywhere in the world and still work together and form a community in real time. One of the huge things that's happening in our times that we are living through is that these communities are forming on a worldwide basis. What else is new is that humans are changing. Humans are becoming what I just called symbiotic human hybrids with our new technologies. It goes way beyond tools. We are becoming people who have new body parts and capabilities. Those body parts today are things like mobile phones, but they will be many more things. Some of them inside us, some of them along with us, some of them perhaps tattooed on our skin or hanging from our ears. The important piece of this is the symbiosis, that humans in the 21st century can't really thrive and be effective without these symbiotic parts. We can still act like people from the past, and many want to do that. But if you really want to be a 21st century human, you need all your human parts, which are increasingly these new symbiotic parts. Many of the things we did by ourselves in the past have already become totally symbiotic with technology. Reading. I read everything on my phone. Writing nonfiction. A lot of the stuff in newspapers and online gets written for us automatically. I subscribe to Future Loop. It's produced by an AI. Accessing information, researching, calculating, translating. Most of us would not do these things without a machine. And even collaborating, learning, agility, and certainly grit are all done symbiotically with our machine properties that we now possess. And there are many other things that are on the way to becoming symbiotic. I don't know if you've seen IBM Project Debater, where a human debates in a formal way the Watson computer. We are getting very close to being good at this. Critical thinking, project management, systems thinking, fiction writing, even art and music are today done symbiotically with machines. Public speaking, conversation, relating to others, and definitely accomplishing, getting things done. All these are on their way to becoming very, very symbiotic tasks. There are some things that are not yet symbiotic, and a lot of people like to focus on those, and it's important to do so. Loving, dreaming, imagining, feeling, warmth, respecting, emphasizing, being ethical, compassion, creativity, and certainly uniqueness are all the human side of the symbiotic relationship, at least for now. What makes it a symbiotic relationship is that both sides need each other. We keep making the machines better, the machines keep making us better. We can't do the kinds of calculations and other things we need without the machines. The machines can't figure out the kind of calculations and things they need to do without us. It's a very symbiotic relationship. And I think perhaps the biggest 21st century challenge of all for humanity is to positively integrate the technology of the 21st century into humans so that we all become good, powerful, world-improving, hybrid people who are able to address the other big challenges like climate change. Another big piece I see changing in the 21st century are beliefs. And beliefs are so important because they underline everything we do. Our beliefs are inside us and they're really filters. They determine whether we go in one direction or whether we go in another direction. We can either go back to the past if we believe that was better, or we can try to move forward to the future if our belief is that that is better. And there are two kinds of beliefs. There are beliefs about what the world is and how it works. Sometimes those are called lenses, or sometimes they're called mindsets. And there are beliefs about how the world should be, and those are often called values. Both are beliefs, and both very much affect our behavior, and both are changing dramatically. We all see the world through the lens of our beliefs. And even though many assume that we experience the world in an objective way, that's not really true. The research tells us our beliefs totally influence our perception of the world. Our perception of the world is totally influenced by our beliefs. So we need to think about those beliefs carefully. And I see beliefs changing generationally. That's not just my opinion, it's the conclusion of cultural anthropologists as well. Young people, in more and more cases and places, have different beliefs than old people, more empowering beliefs than we adults did. If they don't have them yet, they're going to soon acquire them. The beliefs that they can do something, that I can, that we can, are going to be extremely important in the 21st century. In the 20th century, we had the very last pre-internet generation the world will ever know. And that pre-internet generation has a particular set of beliefs. The 21st century is the century of the first internet generation the world will ever know. And there will continually be more connected generations. They have different beliefs. Beliefs that were formed and make sense in the 21st century. 21st century people, I mean people who were born into it, people that I once called digital natives of the 21st century and world, act in the world differently. if we look at it in a very high-level way, a way that is gradually changing from the past. The important implications of this for me is that a new beliefs divide is emerging in the world. And that's really important. It's actually more important than what many think of as the digital divide. What do I mean by the beliefs divide? Here are some of the beliefs that many people from the 20th century believe. Kids have little power. What kids need from adults is specific knowledge and skills that will be important. The key task for kids is learning. Technology is important, but it's just a tool. Do your own work. Individual work matters. That's the big mantra in the academic world. Don't plagiarize, don't copy. And in person is certainly better than seeing anybody virtually through the telephone or on the screen. Those are old 20th century beliefs. The new 21st century beliefs are very different. Kids are now powerful, and they're starting to believe that they are powerful. What they need from adults is more empowerment and good coaching to become more powerful. The key task along the way is accomplishing. And technology is not just a tool, it's a part of us. It's a symbiotic part of us. What matters most is not individual work, but networking and collaboration. That is increasing, of course, all over the world. And as we discussed, we have two worlds, the earth and the cloud, and they are equally important, and the best one for any task is situational. So these are huge changes. And in addition to those changing are changes in many, many key areas of life. Here's a list: technology, privacy, property, personal relationships, sexuality, security, power, working, jobs, God and religion, money, love, violence, abuse, justice, government, and even time and space. Again, this isn't just my opinion, this is the opinion of cultural anthropologists who look at this. What's interesting to me is that the beliefs change is what creates a different future. And that's what's happening today. I wrote last year a book for kids, a very short book online called Beliefs for 21st Century Kids, about the kinds of beliefs that I think kids need to thrive in the 21st century. It's free online and you can get it. Here's the URL. I hope you'll read it to the end. I'm not going to show you the whole book, but I'm going to show you a few of the pages. I am a member of the human race and a citizen of the world before my many other identities. I have a unique set of dreams, passions, strengths, and capabilities that no other human has. I can understand my uniqueness and apply it to bettering my world in my own way. I have the power to create positive change as an individual and even more powerfully in teams. And it goes on. You can find it at this URL, bit.ly/2agr2u. I hope you'll go look at it, because I think it's time that our kids are encouraged to have the new beliefs that will empower them in the 21st century. And again, the beliefs divide is more important than the digital divide, because it's harder to change a person's beliefs than it is to give somebody new technology. I see the challenges of the 21st century as instilling powerful beliefs into kids. That's why I wrote that book. And then finding new ways to bridge the beliefs divide between the adults of the 20th century and the kids of the 21st. What's also new in the 21st century is real-world accomplishment with impact by young people. In the 20th century, kids growing up could not accomplish much in the real world. That's one of the reasons we had them spend time studying. But young people can now accomplish useful things people their age could never dream of doing before, at all levels. At the university level, for example, they can use the CRISPR technology to edit genes. They can do diagnoses and cures for diseases. They can make useful apps and create inventions like footballs that capture the energy of the kicks. And they can use it for powering homes and devices. They are forming all kinds of new companies. There's a big database of all these things, if you're interested, at btwdatabase.org. We're also seeing in the 21st century a focus on uniqueness and unique value. We used to live in a time of replacement. You grew up to replace somebody who was existing in the world who would die. So we needed every generation new doctors, new lawyers, new engineers, new caretakers. Everybody got replaced. What that meant was that we wanted the replacements to be more or less like the people who came before, maybe slightly better. So that's how we prepared them. We trained young people by preparing them to replace the people we had before. In the future, we're not going to have as much replacement because so much is changing. Many people say a lot of the jobs won't exist, and it's true. We have new things for people to do. That's why we now need invention. That's why we now need to focus on our uniqueness. No longer are we fungible replacements. We need each person to discover their unique dreams, passions, their unique interests, their unique strengths, and to put those together with what the world needs. That's the big 21st century challenge. And when they put those together with what the world needs, their goal is to add value to the world. We now talk about creating value and adding value, and that happens through new ways to work. People are not generally as satisfied when they're just sitting around doing nothing as when they're doing work that they choose and they love to do. And that's what we need to promote in the 21st century. We're seeing it happening in a lot of ways. We're seeing jobs that you do for your whole life moving to projects that you do once and that move on to another and another. We're seeing work that was hated. Most people really dislike the jobs they have. Moving, with the help of automation, doing the bad stuff for them, into meaningful work for every person. We're seeing the top-down pyramids of bosses that we had in the past, one person directing everything, moving to peer-to-peer networks. We're seeing workplaces where everybody was together, moving to distributed teams. We're seeing new value creators and new forms of value creation and new forms of value adding. We used to have only a few entrepreneurs in the world. Now we're moving to something some people call mass entrepreneurship. And we're moving from measuring numbers of tasks to measuring the value those tasks add. Did they make a world a better place for somebody beside yourself? So our challenge is really to prepare young people in all these new ways. Because what's true more than anything else in the 21st century for young people is that dreams can come true. Not all or always, but certainly things that kids have always dreamed about doing that were never possible while they were young are now possible. That's what we're seeing in our kids. That is what empowerment means, and that is what we should encourage. We can either pull our kids back to a time when kids were not powerful and had to spend all their time learning before they could accomplish and do useful things in the world, or we can guide them forward into the future. And I think that's a much better solution. We can try to fix the past and incrementally change and put icing on what we do today, or we can create the future. We can do what we have been doing, or we can turn our institutions and ourselves into sources that promote empowerment. There's a new 21st century way emerging to raise young people, and you can help create it. It's what I call Generation Empowered, and I hope they will call themselves the same thing. We can help them find their new beliefs, their unique value, their new connections, their new 21st century powers. We can help them apply those things to accomplishing with positive impact, leading to work that creates value all their lives. And we can help them to realize their positive dreams for themselves, their families, and their world. And we can do that by becoming, instead of an old-style school or university, by becoming what is now called an empowerment hub. That would be a terrific thing for you to become. It's a place where young people come not to learn, but to get empowered, where they come to become good, powerful, world-improving hybrid people. And we're all in the process of figuring out how to do that. We do know that it's not the same kinds of classes and learning that we have had up till now. We have to give our kids a combination of empowering beliefs, real-world accomplishments, creating their own unique value, and symbiosis with technology and teams. In the 21st century, the application of these through accomplishment with impact is really going to be the key. In the 21st century, it's no longer personal achievements that count. It's no longer degrees. It's no longer grades. It's no longer your being at the top of your class academically. It's what you can accomplish with impact that counts in the 21st century. So I encourage you all to try to create the future, to create a meaningful choice that's alongside of and more than what we've always done in education. You can become the first empowerment hub in your country. You can create something that didn't exist in the past. It all starts with empowering beliefs, because beliefs change is what creates a different future. And that's why the new beliefs divide is something that's so important to bridge. So please, right now and going forward, think about which side of that beliefs divide are you on, and which side do you want and need to be on? Because our job is to help move our kids forward into the 21st century through empowerment, through new beliefs, through accomplishments, and through real-world impact. You can become an empowerment hub for all your students. You can create the future. I hope you will. You can email me here. Thank you for listening.